if we look at the foster child grant, a child can be placed in foster care if they have been found to be in need of care and protection as defined in the Children's Act. Now, SASSA does not make that determination. SASSA will come in right at the end of the process. So a social worker starts working with that family who is looking after a child who is not their biological child, who for various reasons has been found in need of care and protection. Children are placed in foster care for legal purposes, and they get the legal protection. They then become wards of the state and they get the legal protection that they need. Now, once they've been placed in foster care, they then can come to SASSA and apply for the foster child grant. The foster child grant is available to anybody who has a foster child legally placed in their care. It is not a means-tested grant because the people are caring for children that are not their own. They may be related, but they don't have to be. They could literally be somebody that is placed by a social worker after an assessment has been done to determine that that family is a good foster family that is going to be able to look after the child and provide the kind of protection that that child needs. Now, once a child has been placed in foster care, then the foster parents would come to SASSA. They'll come to do the application, and in order to do an application, they must have the ID documents for both themselves and the spouse if they are married. They must have the birth certificate for the child, and they must have the court order. There are other requirements that we ask for, like proof of address, just so that we know who we're dealing with. Very important to know also that a foster parent who gets a child legally placed in their care in South Africa has to be a South African citizen, a permanent resident, or a documented refugee. Those are the only people that can apply for the foster child grant. They will come to SASSA. It's also really important that when the child is placed in foster care, the foster child grant does not follow as an automatic thing. So once the child is placed in care, there is the next step to be done, that they've got to come to SASSA and actually apply for that grant. As I've said, they would need to bring all the supporting documents. The application is then done with the assistance of the SASSA officials at a SASSA office, or it can be done online, provided all the necessary documents are there. The online system can be accessed at https://services.sassa.gov.za. We know that a lot of people prefer going to the local offices, but the online process is there for people who have access to the internet and are able to manage the application process themselves without necessarily having to go to an office. Just a reminder, if people do apply online for the foster child grant, the documents that they upload must be certified as true copies. Because we don't see the original, we must make sure that the documents we get are certified, that the original has been seen by somebody who has the authority to certify those as true copies. The application is then made, and this is the only grant that is paid from the date that the child was placed in legal foster care, not from the date of application. So there's generally a time lapse from when the child was placed until the application is done. For example, a child may be placed today on the 25th of May, but the foster parent can only get to a SASSA office on the 6th of June, as an example. They will still be paid from today, which is the date of legal placement of that child. Foster care placement can be done for varied periods. Again, not something that is controlled by SASSA, but something that we need to manage. So a child is placed in foster care if there is a possibility that that child could be reunited with their family. Then the child will generally be placed for a period of 2 years, whereafter that placement has to be reviewed. That means that SASSA can only pay the grant for the 2 years. And when the court order lapses, then we no longer have the legal basis to continue paying the grant. The grant will lapse and the foster parent needs to come back to SASSA with an extension order. Generally, the social workers keep regular contact with their foster parents and they will make sure that the extension order is issued just before the original order expires. The foster parent needs then to come back to SASSA with that extension order and then confirm that the foster child is still in their care, and we would continue paying that grant for the next period that has been given. You also get circumstances where a foster child is placed almost permanently with the foster parents because there is no chance that the child is going to go back to their parents. Either the parents are deceased or the parents cannot be traced, but that child is then placed in foster care until that child turns 18. That means, again, SASSA will provide the grant for as long as the child stays in foster care, and that means until that child turns 18. We may ask for, we won't review the grant because we pay according to the court order. However, if any details on the foster parent's personal information changes, if they relocate or they move house or their address changes, they're pleased to ask to come and advise SASSA so that we keep the current information of the foster parents. This makes sure that any notices we send out from SASSA will reach the foster parent. Foster child grant is paid to the end of the year in which the child turns 18. However, if the child is still in an educational facility, so still at school, at an FET college or a university, or in any kind of further training, they can continue getting the foster child grant. But for the period after the year in which they turn 18, it's paid on an annual basis. So in the January or February of each year, as soon as that foster parent receives the confirmation that this child is enrolled in a specific educational program, they need to bring that to SASSA so that we can then reinstate the grant and it will be paid for the next year. Now, it's important to know that at the end of the year when the child turns 18, that grant will lapse, even if the child is still at school. And then it is the foster parent's responsibility to return to SASSA in the January or the February of the next year to confirm to SASSA that the child is still in school or is furthering their educational training. And we would then pay it for the next year up until December of that year, and the following year they would need to repeat the process. Come back to SASSA, confirm that the child is still in an educational facility. That can be done until the end of the year in which the foster child turns 21. After that, even if the child, or it's now a young adult, even if that young adult is still undergoing training, still attending school, still going to university, the grant will stop. We don't have authority to pay beyond the end of the year in which that child turns 21.